Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Knowledge Series of the Caribbean Growth Forum. Thank you for joining us today. We are very glad to host you all. Today's webinar is dedicated to understanding what are the key factors that will help to stimulate entrepreneurship in the Caribbean based on our direct experience. My name is Sofia Muradan, and I'm private sector specialist at the World Bank and also team leader for entrepreneurship program for innovation in the Caribbean. Today, I'm here with my great colleague, Maya Angelkovic, who is a senior private sector specialist as well. We both specialized in supporting entrepreneurship and innovation programs, development and implementation across the globe. We have a lot to do today. We will start with presentation when we will share our experience on the diagnostic of entrepreneurship ecosystems. Then you will have an opportunity to ask us questions, also participate in short poll. In the end, we will ask you also to take a quick survey to evaluate how you did and what are other things that you would like us to improve or develop further. As I mentioned before, this webinar is a part of the Caribbean Growth Forum Knowledge Series, and the CGF, or Caribbean Growth Forum, is a policy platform for private sector and civic society to participate in shaping the national reforms and help in tracking the implementation progress of this report. This is also a knowledge platform around three main topics: around investment climate, skills and productivity, logistics and connectivity. And the idea is to stimulate peer learning and also sharing best practices with our Caribbean stakeholders. CGF is facilitated by the World Bank in partnership with the Inter-American Development Bank and Caribbean Development Bank. Without further ado, let's move to the presentation. I will invite Maya to start. Please feel free to type your questions along it, and we will be able to address them later. Maya?
Thank you very much, and thanks from my end too for joining us. As you probably know, since you've joined us today, to be competitive in the global economy, countries need to be able to promote and nurture entrepreneurship. And from our work, we've noticed that if there is an intervention that focuses on a particular part of the entrepreneurship ecosystem, be it skills or financing, the intervention is not nearly as effective as when an ecosystem approach is employed, when different deficiencies or gaps in the system are addressed simultaneously. And as a result of some of the work we've done, we've identified a number of bottlenecks. The main ones that we see across all regions are a lack of appropriate skills, be they managerial, technical, or creative skills, all necessary for entrepreneurship, a less than adequate entrepreneurial culture, and then also some regulatory leftovers from previous eras that often need to be updated for various technology advances and new movements in entrepreneurship. And regionally, the impact of these varies. Sometimes skills are the main barrier, other times it's culture that seems to be the main bottleneck. To be able to understand all of these a little bit better, in the Caribbean, we've been doing quite a bit of work under the program that Sophia has been leading.
And actually, thank you, Maya. Basically, all the issues that Maya mentioned, they are true for the Caribbean as well. We all know that the economic crisis of 2008 hit the Caribbean economies very hard, and the recovery since that was very, very slow or even flat. There were several attempts to understand what are the key reasons behind this flat growth, and some of the internationally recognized sources such as Global Entrepreneurship Monitor or Global Competitiveness Index or World Economic Forum, they tried to pull some data on the Caribbean, and the overall picture was pretty much the same as Maya described. The key barriers are policy, some policy regulations, access to finance and skills in the labor force. However, in the Caribbean, I think there is several unique features, such as small size of the economies and small size of populations, and the most important, lack of relevant data on the entrepreneurship in general. There are small kind of portal information available here and there, but there is no comprehensive data source to understand what's going on with the entrepreneurship ecosystem in the region. And that's actually was one of the reasons that we started entrepreneurship program for innovation in the Caribbean, to understand how we can tackle main reasons that were identified before, and what other information we can gather from the entrepreneurs, governments, accelerators and incubators to understand better what are the best ways to support entrepreneurship in the region, and how we can better advise our policy counterparts how it can be facilitated at the national or regional levels.
So this is something that happens around the world, the lack of data. We looked at about 12 different methodologies that allow one to look in depth into what entrepreneurship, the environment for entrepreneurship is like. And we found that all of them were useful, but none of them was able to give us all of the tools we needed to work with the World Bank clients to address deficiencies in an entrepreneurship ecosystem at different levels. And so we've built this very customizable tool that can focus on a particular domain of the ecosystem, or can focus on different levels. The idea here is to look at what data is available and look at what data is relevant for the questions you have, and then produce a report with practical recommendations that can be implemented in different environments, or in your specific environment. And we've worked with different types of stakeholders on these diagnostics. So if you are a policymaker, you might be looking for policy recommendations that can help the country grow entrepreneurs. If you're an incubator manager, you might be looking for best practices on incubation, and you might be looking for networks to connect into. If you're an entrepreneur, you might be looking for better information on sources of finance and mentorship. So we can adjust this methodology to suit the needs of our clients and audiences. Instead of walking you through the mechanics of the diagnostic up front, we thought we would actually work backwards and show you what we've done in some countries, and then move backwards and show you then the methodology, and then take your questions.
Let's start with a Caribbean example, right? Imagine you are an entrepreneur in Suriname. You are not working in mining or agriculture sectors, which is traditionally competitive kind of sectors, the core of the economy. You want to start something in ICT. You have an idea, you have a team, you might be able to find a couple of trainings on business models, very basic. You can go to the bank and receive glorious no to your business idea because it's too risky, you are too early stage. And basically after that you have nowhere to go. This is the typical picture that many Caribbean entrepreneurs are facing with. And in Suriname, we were asked to come and to make a full diagnostic of entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystem to understand what can be done to improve the situation. We spent 2 weeks in the country. We met with more than 70 stakeholders, trying to identify the success stories or gaps and what are out there already and what can be done better. And in the end, what we were able to formulate several policy recommendations for the government that will try to help different entrepreneurs at different stages of growth. For early stage entrepreneurs, the recommendations were made in terms of developing business incubation program with early seed stage funds opportunity. For more established SMEs, the recommendations were made how we can upgrade their managerial skills, improve their access to technology and international markets. And in terms of the innovation ecosystem and strategy, the recommendations were made what kind of steps should be implemented to start building this innovation potential in the country as well.
In Serbia, which is a country in the Western Balkans, we uncovered very technical barriers on the policy side. So, for example, we uncovered some issues in e-payment legislation that were preventing people from transacting between themselves if they were citizens of the country. And we were able to work with our finance and markets colleagues to introduce or propose specific policy changes, and that's now going through the system. On the human capital or skill side, we were able to come up with a proposal that would increase availability of teachers and professors who can then increase the number of students in computer science where the biggest lack was found. And we're now also working jointly with the government of Serbia to flesh out some of the recommendations and come up with an action plan and a matrix of reforms that would then be implemented in the country. We've done similar analyses in Sri-Lanka. Again, e-payments came up with as one of the key barriers, and we are now working with the government on a new project that will support entrepreneurship. In Bangladesh, again, a number of different barriers, including investment readiness of startups, as well as a lack of capacity building programs for angel investors. And so we're working again there to flesh out recommendations. In Morocco, the ecosystem assessment focused on climate technology entrepreneurs, and it was the first time ever anybody had done a survey or had looked into climate entrepreneurship. And so the government was very interested in the findings, and we are now working with them through a project of the International Finance Corporation to better target the governments in our support. To give you a sense now of the methodology, we mentioned 6 domains. Some of you may have heard of the Babson Entrepreneurship Ecosystem Project. They have come up with these 6 domains, but then we've taken the 6 domains and built out the data collection methodology under them. So for each domain, we've identified between 5 and 15 sources of indicators, and they're all publicly available sources. They include World Bank sources as well as others. And then we've also come up with protocols for interviews and focus groups or lists of questions. And we also have an optional survey that can be used as part of the diagnostic or can be left out depending on the client's needs. There are different things we look at under each of the domains: the current environment, the strengths, the successes, but then of course we focus in on the gaps or weaknesses and barriers, and all of this leads to specific policy interventions. So under human capital, they may be formal or informal skills building programs. Under financial capital, we may be looking at grants or angel investors or incentivizing early VCs. Under infrastructure and supports, we're talking about incubation, acceleration programs and training for managers of those programs, and also linking these managers with international networks. Culture and community, we can help with media campaigns to turn perceptions of entrepreneurs to more positive ones. And here we tend to focus on community-based approaches to changing the culture. We also can make specific recommendations on markets linking to global value chains, integration of innovative technologies into existing SMEs, and so on. And then in the policy reforms, of course, all of the above can be reflected, but there are also specific ways that we can promote innovation entrepreneurship through strategies, action plans, focuses on different areas, whether they be in the public sector, private sector, or some combination of the two. This is one of the outcomes. This is again an open source technology. So the Founder Institute has a mapping methodology which we've integrated into this diagnostic, and it gives you a very quick overview of who the players are. So this is the ecosystem in Karachi, and you can see the different players at the idea stage, at the launch stage, at the growth stage. So these are all different types of programs that are available to entrepreneurs, and this helps you both see who they are and where the gaps might be. Also helps you identify some of the successes that can be then promoted. And to get to that, Sophia will tell us a little bit more about the data collection.
Thank you, Maya. So as you can imagine, in order to be able to provide this kind of analysis to you, data collection is critical. How you use this data and what are the sources of your information and how thorough you are is absolutely critical for the quality of the recommendations that you will be able to develop, right? And for this methodology, we have combined 2 approaches, both quantitative data and qualitative data. For quantitative data, as Maya mentioned, we developed a set of indicators that you can pull data from on all 6 domains, and this data is populated from all public available resources. So it's really comprehensive way to give a first snapshot what's going on, for example, in policy or in human capital, what's going on in finance or easiness of doing business. So this is a first step, right? Then we strongly advise to follow up with a qualitative or semi-qualitative approach, data collection, including interviews and focus groups with the stakeholders in the country. Indicators are fine, but you should go there and talk to people to understand what's going on beneath this data, right? Beneath these indicators. That's how we developed the kind of protocols for interviews and groups, but also to give you an idea of what kind of questions or what kind of indicators you can look under each of the main, as you can see now on your screens. For example, under policy, you can go and ask and explore about R&D environment and institutions. Is there venture-friendly legislation? What is the entrepreneurship or SME development strategy in the country, if any, and what can be done better? Under financial capital, you are exploring the availability of the early stage financing, or what are the bank policies, how risk averse they are to support early stage entrepreneurs or any other type of entrepreneurs. Under markets, again, is there access to international markets and global value chains? What is the financial level inclusions in the country? What is the status of digital commerce or e-payments, right? And so on and so forth. You can look in more details, and there is also a website that we developed, which is Digital Entrepreneurship 360 site, where all these indicators are available to populate in the country reports. Right now, we have access internally, but this is just a sample of what the country report will look like on the sample of Jamaica, when you can see the main indicators grouped around the key 6 domains. Going back to the instruments, there is a certain, again, questionnaire and focus group guides that we developed that are guiding the researchers or anyone who is interested to implement this approach on the ground. And we strongly recommend to interview at least 50 stakeholders in the country to be able to get enough information for the analysis and the assessment. My apologies, I'm a little bit ill. If you don't mind.
Of course. We should mention that, of course, we are here to lead the data collection and the processing. So a client or one of you, if you are interested, would be setting the priorities, but we are certainly here to help with the data collection and processing. And this is just to give you a sense of the phases. In the scoping phase, we may be doing some desk research and document review. We might be doing some telephone interviews. In the data collection, we're looking at all the indicators, conducting a survey, conducting the interviews and focus groups. And then the phase 3 is really the most fun, in a sense, in that we analyze all of the data and then work with the client to find priorities and specific policy recommendations to be implemented. Just to give you a sense of what has been done with this so far. So we've tested this in about 12 countries, and other pilots are ongoing. And then there is interest from 20 plus others, including happily from some of your countries in the Caribbean. So we're quite excited to both bring you this tool, but more importantly, to then be able to address the gaps through the variety of instruments which the World Bank Group offers, whether within our team that focuses on entrepreneurship and innovation, or some of the other teams, such as those looking at finance and markets, education, governance, and others. And let us stop here, and perhaps we can turn to the poll questions.
Yes.
And then we also look forward to your additional questions.
So again, before we move to open questions, we have 3 poll questions for you, just to get a snapshot of your kind of preferences or opinions on different issues related to the entrepreneurship in the Caribbean. The first question is, what is the #1 barrier to entrepreneurship in the Caribbean? And you have the following options: access to finance, access to incubation and business support, support to women entrepreneurs, or access to global market. You can now vote for any of these options. Okay. Shall we move to another question? Okay, so basically we have very interesting results. As expected, access to finance was mentioned by 66% of the participants as a key issues for entrepreneurship promotion in the Caribbean. The second is access to incubation and business support, and the third is access to global markets. Mike, if you want to comment.
It's very interesting seeing it move. Of course, access to finance is a big barrier. If there are other issues that are not in the poll, of course, you can type them into the chat window, and we can talk about them in a few minutes. And maybe we can move on to the second poll.
Mm-hmm. So the second question we would like to ask you is, which economic sector in the Caribbean has the most competitive advantage? And we have following options: tourism, agriculture, digital or ICT, creative industries, mining. Okay, we have results now. 52% of the participants mentioned that tourism as the most competitive, as a sector with most competitive advantage. Then creative industries, agriculture, and digital ICT. We will summarize our responses after the third question as well. So let's move to the third one, and we can discuss in more details. So the last question for polling is, what is the number one policy reform to facilitate entrepreneurship in the region? And you have the following options: vocational or higher education system reform, tax regulations, business registration, mobile e-payments, investment incentives, and labor regulations. So we have the results already. Most of the participants, 42%, mentioned that investment incentives are the most critical area for reforms. Then it's followed by the mobile e-payments, vacation and higher education systems, business registration, and tax regulation. I think it's very telling, right? And actually reflects well the overall issues with the entrepreneurship, which it seems that you today really focus on the access to finance. And we can discuss it a little bit more, what it means to develop access to finance in the Caribbean and across the globe based on our experience. But if you have any other questions, we are happy to.
I actually have a question. We don't have a poll set up, but it would be great to know which countries everybody is from. So maybe we can invite you to just type your country in the chat window so we can get a sense. I hope I'm not disturbing the protocol of the webinar. Okay, fantastic. Oh, a fellow Canadian. Hello.
It's like probably the climate generation.
Excellent. It looks like we have quite the international audience. It seems like
Amazing.
Trinidad and Tobago are leading the pack, but we have people from as far away as South Korea, which is fantastic, as well as, of course, the other Caribbean nations, Dominica, St. Lucia, Grenada, Barbados, Aruba. We really wish we could be there with you instead of online.
For sure.
Guyana, Belize, excellent. Well, I would love to know whether the access to finance issue is applicable across the board, or if there is some variation country by country. I saw, as we were talking, a few questions on very small ecosystems. And while Suriname is the only place we've piloted this so far, we'd be happy to pilot in smaller environments. And again, the idea is that this tool is very customizable. And so we can work with you to make sure that it applies to your ecosystem. The other point to mention is that this can be applied at the city level or even a smaller community level. as well as at the national level. So that, to me at least, means that it's adaptable to smaller as well as larger environments. In fact, I think smaller ones maybe.
I would say so.
Better.
I would say that even I think smaller Caribbean countries have an advantage basically because it's very hard to do national level ecosystem diagnostic because of the numbers or the scope, geographical scope. But in the Caribbean, you have really the opportunity to have a snapshot of the whole entrepreneurship ecosystem, not one city, not one region, not one sector, but the whole ecosystem, which I think can be really, really interesting. And that's exactly what we did in Suriname. And that's why we were able to look at core issues, not just sector specific or city or community specific, but that can work or should be improved across the country. So I think in this respect, smaller states have even a little bit of advantage.
We got a couple of advanced questions, and we're now seeing some related questions come up in the chat. And one is related, again, to access of financing. And I see the question by Terry Ross about smart money. Mm-hmm. We have a number of programs that incentivize grant making and angel investment into companies in the Caribbean. Maybe Sophia, you can tell us a bit more about that.
Absolutely. I think you were absolutely right in terms of mentioning access to finance as one of the key questions, key barriers to the entrepreneurship promotion. That's exactly what we faced when we started the entrepreneurship program for innovation in the Caribbean, where we realized that early stage entrepreneurs literally have nowhere to go, right? General risk aversions among traditional funding sources such as commercial banks or loan agencies, they just not financing them at all. And the idea was how we can develop alternative sources of funding for early stage entrepreneurs. That's why we came up with the idea to develop angel investment and working with the high net worth individuals in the region to facilitate creation of angel networks as one of the most popular instruments for early stage financing across the globe, in US, in UK, in developing countries, and it's picking up in Africa right now. And actually, I'm happy to tell you that right now it's 5 angel networks that we are supporting in the Caribbean, 2 in Jamaica, 1 in Barbados, and 2 in Trinidad and Tobago. There is an interest coming from Belize and St. Lucia. But this is, I think, the first step of building this alternative access to finance mechanism in the region that will help entrepreneurs to diversify their opportunities to get funding, to grow, and to scale up. This is kind of one example what can be done in the region. Another option or kind of route to do is to develop crowdfunding, right? Also, that is online peer-to-peer kind of or investment mechanisms that are trying to help with the smaller amounts and really is driven by entrepreneurs and their potential customers. It's still in a very nascent stage in the region, and we are preparing actually the assessment report for the crowdfunding opportunities, and hopefully it will be published soon and will provide some kind of guidelines, again, what can be done to develop this alternative funding mechanism in the region as well.
Maybe to address one more question that came twice ahead of the seminar, which is about creditworthiness of startups. And so this, of course, relates to the ability of new companies, entrepreneurs to get loans from banks. And the World Bank does have programs through which we work with commercial banks to enable them to more easily lend to riskier companies that don't necessarily have collateral. And so we'd be happy to connect you with the teams that work on that. And while we continue to discuss, perhaps if I can throw out another question, which is to ask if you can, again, type into the chat window whether you are a policymaker, an entrepreneur, an incubator or accelerator manager, just to share a little bit about your role in the ecosystem. And in the meantime, perhaps Sophia.
We can have more questions that we have received before the webinar. We will try to address them now while you are typing. So one question came from Gerard Thomas, and he's asking, do the results from the diagnostic tool match those ones of the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor reports. Maya, if you want to address it.
So there are a number of things. The Global Entrepreneurship Monitor is a great initiative based on a self-reported survey, and it has some interesting results about a number of ecosystems. We look at those results as part of the diagnostic, but the idea is that we can go a little bit more in depth on particular gaps that are found. So in that sense, it fits well, but it's not an exact match, if you will.
Yeah. Another question that came from Wayne Neal is, what are the trending startups spearheaded by Caribbean-born people? We can't talk for all of them, but just recently I came back from Montego Bay, where first Business Angel Investor Forum was held, and there were several amazing entrepreneurs from Jamaica, Trinidad, and Belize pitching their ideas. For example, one was Lone Cyrus, which is the new startup that trying to solve online loan management systems. There is another amazing startup, Listen Me, which is trying to develop online media resources for the national folklore tales and stories and animation to kind of promote traditional culture in the Caribbean across the region. Another amazing company that we heard is Sweetie, basically, which is trying to produce locally flavored hard candies. It's amazing because there are none of this available in the market. And this lady, I forgot her name, but the idea was to introduce like really traditional Caribbean flavors into the hard candies and to make it available in supermarkets and stores. So this kind of things, wide variety from ICT and digital and creative industries, from manufacturing of hard candies. I think the Caribbean entrepreneurs demonstrate amazing levels of creativity. The main issue is how to translate this creativity into the commercial business ideas, how to prepare your team to scale and grow, and how to access not only your national but regional and maybe international markets. So this is exactly what we are trying to work on in the region during the past 5 years.
Just seeing a couple of other questions. One was, or a couple were around who these angel investors are in the Caribbean. And from what I know, it's mostly local investors, local high net worth individuals, as you said, who may have been used to investing in more traditional sectors, whether that's mining or real estate, and who are now working together to look at more riskier opportunities. But I am pretty sure there are also diaspora groups, including in Canada, that have been involved in capacity building. I'm not sure if there has yet been an investment. I think there may have. Do you know?
Not yet, but I think Maya is right. So there were a lot of discussions in the region how we can attract Caribbean diaspora back to the region, right? And it's not as easy as it seems sometimes. And we did actually a feasibility study with the Caribbean diaspora back in 2 years ago to understand what they need to come back and to invest in the region. And the ultimate answer that we've got is that we need reliable and trustworthy partners who know what are they doing, who can identify a deal flow for potential investors and who can co-invest with us, right? And that was actually one of the reasons why we started supporting this angel investor groups creation, because this is the starting point, right? You should create a local network, a local people who will invest and do amazing job as they are doing right now. So the diaspora or any other international angel investor groups can come back to the region and co-invest with them. So it is still early stages. We have very good success stories. For example, there are 7 investments already that were done by First Angels Jamaica, right? And this is the start. There are negotiations with different international groups how they can come and share their knowledge and assist with the deal flow preparation. But this is work in progress, for sure. I think another question that we received prior the seminar start was about what are some of the main skills that business accelerators or business incubation programs needed in the Caribbean to promote sustainable entrepreneurship. And this question came from Alexandra Indara. And I think it's a very important question because this is another issue that we are facing in the Caribbean quite a lot, is that the quality of the business support to the entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs who really want to grow and scale up, is sometimes lagging behind. And Maya, just based on your experience also across the globe, what are the key factors that I think you think should be introduced in the region?
It's an unfair question since you're an incubator specialist as well as a Caribbean specialist, but I think it's, as we know, and I think the audience probably already knows too, who you choose for the manager of the incubator or accelerator has an disproportionate amount of influence over how the initiative unfolds. So someone who ideally is a former entrepreneur, who has been successful, who wants to give back to the community, who has great networks, who can extend the mentor circle beyond the immediate environment of the entrepreneur and who can see opportunities, but also someone who is a good manager, project manager, as well as a team manager. I think choosing that person is probably the single most important thing for the success of the incubator and or accelerator.
Just to, I absolutely agree with you, but I think just to add also, what we can see, again, based on our experience of working in many countries, it's absolutely critical also for business acceleration or incubation program to understand what exactly they want to achieve, right? And what are the market failures that they want to address. Because if you are targeting wrong type of entrepreneurs or you're addressing issue that is not actually an issue, then your program is not adequate or it won't work. So this is one critical kind of question that all business incubation or acceleration programs should ask themselves. What exactly we are trying to bridge, what kind of gap we are trying to bridge, right? Another, I think, weakness that we see in many programs is the access to mentors, right? So we all know that it's impossible to do everything by yourself, right? Even if you are a great business acceleration or incubation program, you need access to external expertise. You need to be able to invite these people to work with your entrepreneurs. And this is one of the weakest points probably that we can observe, not only in the Caribbean, but in many countries we are working, again, across the globe. So, yeah.
Seeing a question about follow-up actions, and it's a great one from Michelle Thomas. There are two main outcomes. One is the community that is formed and the connections between the different stakeholders that begin to form during the assessment itself. So often in any environment, different types of stakeholders will think they know exactly what the problem is, but they will really only see it from their angle. So a policymaker may see entrepreneurs or a government official may see entrepreneurs who are leaving the country to take their startup elsewhere as being motivated by tax evasion or something like that. The entrepreneur, meanwhile, sees the government as perhaps not involved enough or over-involved. And there's often not enough communication between these different stakeholders. Once you put them in a room and get them used to sharing information, it's incredible to see how much more information comes out and both of them leave saying, I didn't consider this from this other point of view, which is how you really get to potential solutions. So that's a community building aspect of the exercise. The other, of course, is the explicit outcome, which are the gaps identified for the ecosystem and then recommendations for policy reforms or programming. And there, the World Bank can produce a report and leave it with our client and say, this is what we found. Or we can also continue to work with you to implement a program. That can be a quick program, it can be a 7-year program, it can look at one particular domain, so it can focus, for example, on access to finance, or it can have an ecosystem approach. Ideally, it leads to certain policy reforms that can be executed relatively quickly, or if it's a longer process that's needed, we can also work to provide technical assistance along the way. We can also provide connections, as some of you are noting in the chat, as well as best practices from various different places. We also have a course for incubator managers that has different modules, and it's primarily aimed at incubator managers, but actually very useful for policymakers and entrepreneurs themselves. So it opens the door to a host of interventions that we can help with, and it's really up to the client or you to set the specific priorities. I'm seeing a lot of comments about connections, which is fantastic. And of course, we'd be very happy to connect with you on LinkedIn, on email, and so on. And I'd also be really interested to know more about all of the participants. Okay, there's a question on how we can find the course. Do you know the URL off the top of your head?
It should be no, but we will be sharing additional resources, and we will check with the organizers of the webinar if we can share additional resources with you and give a URL right away. We have also several questions in terms of the policy and program design on the regional or national levels. So I think it's an important question also for the Caribbean especially, what you should do to support kind of regional integration, right? Given the small sizes of the economies in the country. And believe me, it's a very challenging task, but extremely important. I think the main obstacles that we see right now, or just experienced during past several years working with the Caribbeans, is their ability to convene people and to provide this neutral platform for discussion and exchange of the ideas and developing some kind of common approaches. And I think in this respect, this kind of webinar and your ability to follow up with the group is extremely important because Caribbean is a very diverse region, right? And we are not making any mistake. And each country is unique and specific and have unique challenges, but there is also a lot of similar issues that can be addressed at the regional level, especially if we're talking about developing some kind of access to finance regional programs. And we're trying to do it by creating, for example, regional angel investor network, right? So it's not on a national level, but on a regional level as well. We're trying to create not create, but facilitate the regional network of business incubators that we are working with, because this is the community of practice that can be really, really beneficial for the participants and entrepreneurs of these business incubators. So there are several kind of options how we can create regional linkages, although again I should say it's still a work in progress and in a way daunting task to accomplish.
Seeing some more questions. One is on the suitability of specific entrepreneurs to enter an incubator program. It really depends on the incubator program, what else is available and what comes after. We do have a network of incubators, including digital labs and hubs, that each have slightly different criteria, and happy to share those and put you in touch with them, including some who are in the Caribbean. And then there was also a question by Craig Nesty about conducting a national assessment. We'd be very happy to have a more detailed conversation to see how we can help both you and anyone else who is interested in conducting one of these. And it's great to see you talking in the chat window. I really wish we were all in the same room, so that's fantastic. To get a diagnostic assessment done, the cost depends on the scope. So we've really tried to make the tool as flexible as possible. It would really take a conversation to figure out what the scope is you're interested in, whether it's a focus on a particular domain, the entire ecosystem, and what other activities you might be already engaging in, and how this plugs into your ongoing programming. So for all of you interested in doing one of these assessments, please let us know. I assume we will have your information to follow up. And of course, you have our email addresses at the end of the PowerPoint. Maybe we can, no, we can't change the slide anymore. Can we put our emails, which is the next slide? And love to hear from you. Great. And in the meantime, we've somehow scrolled up on the chat window.
I think we have 5 more minutes probably for questions, and after that, we will really would like to ask you to complete a quick survey and to evaluate the seminar and the topics that you heard about. But we have, I think, 5 more minutes to receive any questions from your side.
There is one on what incubator is a good example in the Caribbean. Perhaps, Sophia, you could share a bit about the various EPIC programming and the experiences with enablers.
Sure. So there are several interesting incubation projects in different stages. I should say that they are still in the process of kind of developing their value proposition and working with the entrepreneurs, but I think some of the incubators that we supported, and such as Branson Entrepreneurship Center or incubators in Grenada and Belize, Beltrade, they are interesting programs. I can say that they are really kind of one leader that we should all look at, because again, each incubator is unique to their ecosystem, right, in terms of what they want to achieve and how they want to work. And I think there is still potential to grow because the demand from the entrepreneurs, I think, is higher than the supply. Definitely, there should be more diversity in terms of sectors that are served by the incubators. We are trying to promote also women entrepreneurship support, not through incubators per se, but through acceleration programs, which is an alternative way how you can support entrepreneurs that are later in their growth stage. So there are several initiatives ongoing in the region, and it probably would be unfair just to point or to select several ones. But there's still a lot kind of more work that should be done in this sphere.
Some other questions are coming up around angel investors and whether people other than high net worth individuals can get involved. And perhaps you can share with us a little bit of information on the recent forum that was held on angel investment and whether any follow-up is planned on that.
It's a good question, and probably I'm not in the best position to answer this because how you can join the group is defined by the group, not by us. Mm-hmm. So each of them have some regulations and criteria, what kind of people and how you can become a member or associate member. And I think the best way to do it is just to contact the network directly and to explore what are the regulations of joining the network. So we can share with you the information on or contacts of each network that we are supporting. We can definitely send it later on the webinar through the mailing list that we hopefully will have. But the best way is to approach the network.
To just name some of them, the 5 networks Sophia mentioned are Trident Angels in Barbados, First Angels Jamaica in Kingston, Alpha Angels,
Montego Bay, IP
Angels in Port of Spain,
and
Renaissance Angels also in Port of Spain. Some of these are more advanced than others.
Yes.
And as Sophia mentioned, we can make all of this available after this seminar, including connecting you to our angel investment specialists who can provide more direct information.
But again, as I mentioned, they all have certain eligibility criteria or the process how you can join them. So you definitely need to explore more details from them, how it can be done.
Perhaps just one last question from the chat window, which is related to intellectual property rights protections. We certainly can work with you to look at the extent to which this is a barrier and what might be able to be done. There are various technology transfer program models, commercialization models that touch on this IP issue, and there are ways to build capacity for people, universities, technology transfer offices to enable entrepreneurs to register intellectual patents and other intellectual property more easily, and to make available information about what's already registered and out there.
Exactly. Great. Okay. I think that's all time that we have to answer your questions. Thank you again very much for participation. I think we have very interesting discussion, and we were extremely glad to see all these conversations that were going on between the participants. As Maya mentioned, we'll be really happy to follow up with you and provide any additional resources that we can. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed the seminars as much as we did. And I will just like again to ask you quickly to fill in the survey on the evaluation, feedback, and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.